2012. There was a little game launched back in the year 2012 by the name of Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And that game just so happened to take place in a different year, in the future. A year known as 2025, aka this year. Now at that time, Black Ops 2 was titled a futuristic shooter, but now that we are in that year that the game takes place, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at just how realistic, or for that matter, unrealistic, Black Ops 2 really was. Taking a look at how the Black Ops 2 story fits not only into today's society, but also in the modern Call of Duty story that we have today, with the Modern Warfare franchise also being a part of the Black Ops franchise. So in other words, let's start with the building blocks of the Black Ops 2 story, aka the backstory. Now in the year 2025, the story of Black Ops 2 starts with someone by the name of Raul Menendez, a character who has a very seeded backstory, not only being a Nicaraguan drug runner, but also an arms dealer for several of the world's bad guys. Now in the 2025 portion of the story, he is in search for a rare earth element known as Celerium. What does he want with Celerium? He wants to use it for something known as quantum computing, which he is using to hack and take control of the entire US Army's fleet of drones to turn them against the US, which, believe it or not, isn't really that crazy. In fact, quantum computing is a thing known in today's society.
Hi. I'm Julian Kelly, Director of Hardware at Google Quantum AI. And today, on behalf of our amazing team, I'm proud to announce Willow. By our best estimates, a calculation that takes Willow under 5 minutes would take the fastest supercomputer 10 to the 25 years. That's a 1 with 25 zeros following it.
It is indeed something which is being done using quantum mechanics rather than traditional computers that you are using sitting at home to complete tasks tens of millions times faster than a traditional computer, which actually today poses a huge threat against encryption, just like we see in Black Ops 2.
This advancement was enabled by our new dedicated superconducting quantum chip fabrication facility.
Now, as I mentioned, Black Ops 2 was made in the year 2012, about the year 2025. This video that you're watching here is from 3 weeks ago. However, in the real world in 2025, a thing such as quantum computing is being looked at to be used for things more along the lines of cryptocurrencies and AIs, whereas in Black Ops 2, it is being used to hack military drones. So that's where the story lines up in the real world, but the other area to look at here is how it lines up with the story of Call of Duty as well. Now, the closest thing that we have to the year 2025 is from Modern Warfare 3, taking place in the end of 2022 and into 2023. We have a character known as Vladimir Makarov, and it just so happens that at the end of Modern Warfare 3, that game is left off on a giant cliffhanger, as Vladimir Makarov takes it to Task Force 141, killing Soap McTavish and going disappeared into the wind, seemingly planning an attack and therefore planning World War 3 as well. Now, we don't really know what happens to this because the Modern Warfare 3 campaign, well, kind of sucked, but we do have a little bit more information specifically about weapons because of the game Modern Warfare 2 taking place in the year 2022. In this game, we have a drug cartel known as the Los Alamos Cartel. During this, Task Force 141 takes it to the cartel and tries to destroy their method of operation, stopping them from smuggling weapons to terrorists, therefore making an open opportunity for someone like Raul Menendez to push his weapons upon those terrorists in and of himself, which we therefore may see some sort of tie-in between Raul Menendez, Cortus Die, who we will talk about in a little bit, as well as the bad guys known as Vladimir Makarov. Yeah, you're not hearing me wrong. In the year 2025, or moving forward, as we have heard, the game taking place this year, Call of Duty 2025, may as well be a sequel to Black Ops 2 and take place 5 years in the future, once again in the year 2030. Who knows what that technology will actually be? Now, one of the things that I have seen and complaints that I have seen about Black Ops 2 and the story being brought together between the Black Ops universe and Modern Warfare universe is that indeed the technology from Black Ops 2 might actually be too advanced for today's society in the year 2025. So let's take a look at whether or not that is true. First of all, one of the things that we see throughout Black Ops 2 are VTOLs. VTOLs are everywhere in this game. And yes, we do have these in real life, whether you're looking at Ospreys, vehicles that can land vertically by flipping their propellers horizontally or vertically, or something more along the lines of the F-35B Harrier. These are in the military and have been in there for quite some time. Now, we don't normally see these landing in the middle of populated areas, whereas normally we see them landing on aircraft carriers. In Black Ops 2, we see them quite literally everywhere. Now, as we mentioned, the mainstay and kind of like the main story of Black Ops 2 is all about drones. Drones are everywhere, whether you're looking at a very tiny surveillance drone like Ziggy from the campaign, or something that we see in multiplayer like the ARG, or as I like to call it, the Wallybot. Both of these are very real and very much so used in today's military. Whether you're looking at small surveillance drones or something along the lines of a Talon drone with a machine gun mounted to it, these are all things seen today. And in fact, one thing that we have seen more and more over the past years is the use of drones in military combat. Throughout the Russia-Ukraine war, we have seen drones be a mainstay within this battle. Both sides using them and both sides trying to constantly find ways to disrupt, hack, or destroy the enemy's drones, as it's by far the safest and one of the most destructive ways of taking the battle to the enemy in a way that doesn't put humans in danger. Now, the entire idea and politics behind this, whether this is humane or safe or even violates a war crime, is up for debate. But one thing is 100% true: it is definitely in today's combat. Now, another thing that we see within the campaign is wingsuits, jetpacks, things along those lines. Now, these do exist and the technology does exist, but most of these are rather used by thrill seekers and not in military combat whatsoever. But I think the thing that is by far the least realistic is the millimeter scanner. This is an optic within the game that essentially uses X-rays to see enemies through walls, and is a huge part of the campaign, but not so much a part of the multiplayer. Now, of course, in the military, we have things like infrared and thermal sights. Those 100% do exist, but X-rays to see people through walls, not so much. However, this makes the target finder optic all that much more realistic that we see, but yeah, that millimeter scanner, not so much. Now, in my opinion, one of the coolest things from the Black Ops 2 campaign was Colossus, the floating city that we go to. Now, as of right now, floating cities do not exist on Earth. However, they are representative of something else that we have. If you ever have a look at Dubai, it is a completely man-made city made as a playground for the ultra-rich, just like Colossus is. Now, Dubai may not really take place in the middle of the ocean or anything like that, but a city like Dubai is definitely a great representation of something like Colossus that we see within Black Ops 2. Also, the inequality of the ultra-rich to the super poor that we see within Black Ops 2 is also on main stage within the game as well. And this brings us to our next thing that we can see in Black Ops 2, that of course being the politics. Now, I don't really talk about politics on the channel, but it is a main part of Black Ops 2. First off, the President of the United States is a female president, known as President Bosworth. She becomes a main character throughout this, and we have been somewhat close to this a couple of times in US history, but we haven't quite been there yet. Now, on top of this, there is a giant movement known as Cortes Die.
This video is triggered to play upon my assassination. Cordestier, you know how to proceed. My death will shine light upon ubiquitous darkness.
Now, this movement is ran by Raul Menendez, and I wouldn't say it's quite met by today's standards, but some would certainly say certain political ideologies and movement would match what Raul Menendez is trying to push forward. However, one thing they nailed in today's political infrastructure is China's monopoly on transistor and chip production. This was something that we saw during the COVID days. The price of these chips skyrocketing as one of the only places in the world to produce them being China. There was a shortage. Vehicles were shorted everywhere across the world. Computers were hard to get, graphics processors were nowhere to be found, and it was all because they were all being made in China, and production and shipment was pretty much shut down during COVID. This is something that is still happening today, and is definitely something that they nailed. Now, there was also an allied group of Asian nations known as the SDC within this game. Something like that doesn't truly exist today, but one thing they got completely wrong was Russia. Russia was nowhere to be found during Black Ops 2, and as we know, within today's political society and today's infrastructure in the real 2025, Russia is a huge player in today's world's political climate. Now, as a whole, I have to say, probably the biggest thing within Black Ops 2 is the use of drones. And in today's society, whether we're talking about just consumer use of drones, or whether we're talking about them in military, they are in way more places than you may realize. Whether we're talking about an unmanned helicopter going into a war zone to bring forward surveillance, or whether we're talking about these mini spy drones that we see in several different areas throughout the Black Ops 2 campaign, or whether we're talking about dogs with machine guns mounted on their back that aren't actually dogs and are rather robots, all of these are things that we have in today's technology. And I do have to say, even though this game was made in 2012, the 2025 future that they predicted isn't so far from the truth. But this once again brings us back to how Raul Menendez will fit into the story of the game. Like I mentioned, Vladimir Makarov is our most recent threat in the year 2023 in the Call of Duty universe, or cinematic universe, if you want to call it that. Raul Menendez is what we are picturing for Black Ops, and is he going to come back? Is he going to be tied together with Vladimir Makarov? That is what we are waiting to see, because as rumored, the game to come out in 2025 is supposed to be the Black Ops game to follow up the game that took place in 2025. But when we look at this, the real craziest part about all of this story and everything fitting together is that we are now in 2025. This is the last year you can go ahead and play Black Ops 2 looking at it as at all of a futuristic shooter. Because after this year, every time you pick up Black Ops 2, it is no longer a futuristic shooter. In fact, it is a piece of history. It will now be in the past. Not a piece of your imagination, not a piece of the future, a piece of history. Just like we look at Call of Duty World at War and see a World War II shooter, Black Ops 2 will now be a shooter that takes place in the past.